I'm Spud Whiteman, and I was a member of NASCAR Xfinity and Cup Series team Phoenix Racing for a whole lot of years. Legend James Finch out of Panama City was our owner, and I'm proud to be a part of his racing legacy. That's right, I was one of James's naughty Phoenix Racing boys. Now let's see what we can dig out of Phoenix Racing's history vault for today. This video is about my favorite race from my favorite season with one of my favorite cars and one of my favorite drivers. The race was Phoenix Racing's dominating win in the 2001 Hardees 250 at Richmond International Raceway. And why was 2001 my favorite season? We ran a 27-race limited schedule, and the race shop was still down in Panama City, so we got to spend a few Saturdays either out on the boat or bar hopping on the Harleys down at the beach. The driver was Mr. Excitement himself, Jimmy Spencer. We all loved working with Jimmy. He was super low maintenance. And my favorite car? It was Phoenix Racing's chassis number 025, a really sweet Billy Hess 1.5-inch drop snout. I've tried to recreate that race using legendary sim NASCAR Racing 2003. Even though it is over 20 years old, most simmers still consider it the gold standard for NASCAR sims. I've used the Racing Reference website to get all the right drivers in all the right cars with all the right sponsors for the starting grid in this race. And I have to give a big shout out to Project Wildfire and their 2003 Busch Grand National Series mod, as well as 4Y Designs and Sim Racing Design for the incredible job they did with the 2001 full BGN car set. With the exception of us winning, the results of the sim race weren't much like the real one. However, it did turn out to be a pretty interesting race. In the sim, we were 5th fast in the first practice, we qualified 6th, and then we were at the top of the board for happy hour. It's looking like Simulated Jimmy has gotten stuck up in the high groove and dropped all the way from 6th place to 9th. I'm going to step back and let the sim race run a few laps on its own, but not to worry. I'll be stepping back in with some of Phoenix Racing's real history in a minute or two. You'll find that I do that a time or two throughout this video. As I said, chassis 025 was a Billy Hess 1.5-inch drop snout. I've heard a lot of guys refer to Billy's cars as Hess mess, but let me tell you, we ran awfully well with several of his chassis. When Billy hit the mark with the chassis, he hit it good. Sadly, he passed away in July of 2022. What is an 1.5-inch drop snout, you ask? It is one where the pickup points for the lower A-arms are 1.5 inches lower than those found on a Hopkins standard chassis. 025 was an incredible car, and we may have smudged the ink on a couple of pages of the rule book when we built that thing. It was so good on the short tracks that we tried to build a new and improved version chassis 031 for 2002. It looks like Simulated Jimmy, let's call him Simmy, has worked his way back up to his original starting position as 6th. He's sitting behind the 33 car at Tony Raines. And Simmy's gotten tired of 6th place, but I'm sure he'll wave politely at Tony Raines as he makes the pass. Something we did try in 031 was to toss out the solid U-bolts that hold the rear end of the truck arms and make some out of round tubing that we threaded on the ends and bent into a U. Of course, we welded the ends shut so that the fact that they were hollow didn't stand out like a diamond in a goat's ass. Shucks, we were just trying to save a little unsprung weight. Unfortunately, when Timmy Hammer, our jackman, dropped the jack on the first pit stop in the 2002 Richmond race, Jimmy romped on the throttle and those U-bolts kind of broke. Our rear tire carrier, Chuck Myers, and I were trying to pick up the pieces and shove them into our fire suits, and NASCAR official Alan Shepard, aka Gadget, was busy yanking pieces of evidence out of our hands. After the race, one of the other officials asked our crew chief, Mark Reno, how we were able to drill out the U-bolts around the curve. Mark's answer is kinda unprintable. Now, there was no rule against hollow U-bolts before the race, but there sure was one after. Anyway, 301 was never quite as good as 025. However, we hit the bullseye down the road with chassis 039. In 2003, we moved the race shop from Panama City, down in Florida, on up to Spartanburg, South Carolina. It was Buckshot Jones's old shop, and it is a beautiful facility. James had a big room added on that held both of our haulers, as well as a wash bay and 2-stall paint and body shop. We used upstairs for storing race car parts. Anyways, when we moved up, one of the tasks that now came my way was for me to be the archivist of all of our race files, data acquisition, wind tunnel, 7-post tests, chassis measurements, all of it from soup to nuts. Since I started doing that in 2003, my notes prior to that are a little sketchy. So I reached out to the Pisons, that's what I call the old Panama City hams, and asked for their help in what they remembered about this race and season. Their responses were the usual mockery and ridicule that they direct my way. Let me give you an example of one of their less than helpful memories. Matt Hutter, our front changer, texted me, and I quote, "I remember the front tire changer was a strikingly handsome dude. I hope the simulation can really capture that guy's Hollywood good looks, and of course the insane skill level with which he attacked that job." I then texted back that I remembered the front changer being modest to a fault, but that he was also known for his questionable judgment. A case in point. One time we were coming back from the beach and were stuck in traffic on the Hathaway Bridge, the bridge that crosses over the bay and connects Panama City with Panama City Beach. Our crew chief, Mark Reno, told Matt that $100 said he didn't have enough hair on his ass to jump off the bridge. Matt immediately opened the door and, without looking down to see what might be below, went sailing over the side. I should point out that we may have had a few toddies while we were at the beach that day. Upon texting this memory back to Matt, he said, "Yes, a devil-may-care free spirit with no fear of the unknown. Add that in as well." It looks like Simmy has made his way up to 4th and is fixing to pass Mikey Magic Shoes McLaughlin. You might have noticed that we weren't running any Chevy decals or headlights on our car. Chevy wasn't giving us any help, and so James said the heck with them and made us leave anything identifying us as a Chevy off the car. The reps tried getting into victory lane because it was a Chevrolet win, but James tossed them out. His feeling was, give us some support and you'll be welcome to the party. James was never afraid to step on some toes. Of course, NASCAR later mandated that you had to run the headlights and the manufacturer decals. We sailed through post-race inspection and got loaded. Later, we loaded up the truck. I always went through an emotional letdown after a race, and it was no different even when we won. I never enjoyed myself during our races. I was too busy doing my job. Unlike our rear changer who spent his time up on the wall watching the race and could give you a full recap afterward, I concentrated on our car and our race. It has only been later that I've been able to watch our old races on YouTube and get any pleasure out of them. Simi has just passed Scott Wimmer and taken over second place. The only fellow left in front of him is the number 2 car, Kevin Harvick. This is Chuck Myers. He started with Phoenix Racing a couple of months after I did in 2000. He was our suspension guy back at the shop, the car chief at the track, and carried rear tires during the race. You got to remember that these were the days when hardly any of the Busch teams used a hired pit crew. Those of us on the road crew got the car through inspection and then worked on it during first practice. We got the car qualified and then swapped over to our race setups for happy hour. We worked our fannies off and then suited up and pitted the car during the race. It was all just part of the job description in those times. I consider old Chucky to be one of my best friends, which goes to show how lousy my luck is with finding decent friends. Chuck is back up in his hometown of Chilton, Wisconsin now, which is just a stone's throw from Road America, and for the last few seasons, when the Xfinity Series would race there, I would get together with Chuck and what I can only describe as his long-suffering wife Shelley, and go out to dinner. Kevin and Simi are starting to work their way through some lap traffic. It's time to fish or cut bait. Why don't we sit back and watch and see how long it takes Simi to get up on Kevin's back bumper. You know, Kevin Harvick had a pretty good season in 2001 also. It was only his second year full-time in the Busch Series. He ended up with 4 poles, 24 top 10s, 20 top 5s, and 5 wins, not to mention that he also won the Busch Series championship. RCR had figured to run him in a few Winston Cup races in 2001 and then move him up to a full-time Cup ride in 2002. Dale Earnhardt's unfortunate death in the 2001 Daytona 500 changed all that. Harvick suddenly found himself a week later in a full-time Cup ride in the 29 car at Rockingham. He won his first Cup race a couple of weeks later at Atlanta. You know, time passes in a blink of an eye. It's 2024 now, and Kevin Harvick retired racing the Cup full-time at the end of the 2023 season. Well, here it is, lap 37 of a 40-lap race, and Simi is fixing to put the hoodoo on that 2 car to take the lead and the win. One of the things that I did very much love when we won was the party on Sunday once we got back to Panama City. Our bar, our home away from home, was the Yatchet Club. It was actually the Yacht Club, but we pronounced it Yatchet. James had owned it at one point and would own it again before we moved the shop up to Spartanburg. Anyways, when we won, they'd throw a shrimp boil, and let me assure you that it was done right. You know, us Panama City guys, me and my paisans, we knew we had something special when the shop was down in Panama City. Don't get me wrong, it was good when we moved up to Spartanburg, and there were lots of wonderful memories from that time too. But the Panama City days were special. We just didn't realize how very special they were until a few years had passed. I've got an ear-to-ear smile just thinking about them. Now, if it wouldn't be a bother, like the video and hit the subscribe button. Thanks for watching.